Everybody, welcome to week 253 of this crazy train.
Wow.
So, yes, the world is still chaotic. And what are you going to do about it? So, it was really interesting. I was at a CBEX event this morning listening to Ron Weatherly, who ironically scaled his company up um, dramatically during COVID. And he had all the trials and tribulations of being an entrepreneur before that. Um, but it was very interesting. And I thought, man, remember back, it wasn't that long ago, 5 years ago, we all had to pivot and we didn't know what in the world. And the
That's right.
everything that was going on in the world was completely outside of our control. Everything. It seemed like. So what do we do? Uh, oh, Papa Joe is weighing in. He's giving you big hey to Jim already. So Joe's always good to see you.
Thanks,
So
Joe.
we're going to be talking about what are the things you can do, what are the things that you should be doing in the middle of chaos and uncertainty, and controlling the things that you can, and saying, say la vie to the things that you can't. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We've got Jim Dunn, famous Sandler guy, which was interesting in listening to Ron Weatherly today because Brandy Milazzo was on and she was moderating as kind of a stunt double. She got the call last night at the midnight hour that the guy that was supposed to be moderating this morning got sick, evidently. So she came in, she was prepared. But as she's interviewing him, I'm thinking, he did all the things that we have talked about repeatedly on this program on how do you maximize the value of your company in case opportunity starts knocking. Because Ron wasn't looking to sell Dry Pro, where they were doing, encapsulating crawl spaces and remediating water issues in crawl spaces here in the Charlotte region. Um, he first thing he said, man, I had super clean financials. Oh ho ho. That's a big one. And he wasn't planning on selling, but he had great systems. He goes, man, we had everything documented, everything because we wanted to scale. He had a really good management team that he grew up, that he grew. He didn't import people. He grew this leadership team he had them involved in the kind of next tier leadership roundtables of Vistage. So he paid for them to do that. He paid for himself to do that. And he also went through Sandler. So he was a Vistage guy. He was a Sandler guy. He had good financials. He had great advisors. He said, you got to have good attorneys, good CPAs, good trusted advisors by you. And you have to be teachable. And I thought, man, this guy just gave a walk and talking commercial for how to do it and all the stuff that we've been talking about for so long. So that's the Cliff's Notes from the CBEX event this morning with Ron Weatherly. So um, anyway, before we launch into how could you possibly double your company in the next 3 to 5 years, and we're going to give you some practical things. And if I'm not mistaken, Jim has an event on May the 5th or May the 1st, May
May
the
1st.
1st, um, in South End and our building at 1616 Camden Road. And there's registration. He can talk about that, but he's going to be talking and going deeper than what we can go today. But we hope that you will get some nuggets from this conversation today that will benefit you. So, but before we do that, current events and all the crazy stuff that's going on. Adam, Jack, anything that you guys want to weigh in? Hey, Jack, are we back on with FinCEN again, or off again, or where are we at with the?
I really don't have to say too much because it's kind of like, okay, well, it's still off, but not permanently off. And then with respect to tariffs, it's okay, I could tell you something now, and then it might change in the next hour or next day. So as far as, who's getting the relief, who's getting the breaks, how much are we going to charge China? Who is been running around in the White House trying to strike a deal. So it's chaotic. And I think you guys know that we have Shoemaker Advisors, which is kind of like our political group that hangs out in DC. I'm actually going to go see them in a couple weeks. And they said, yeah, it's just chaos up there, and have sides, obviously. And I'm trying to get the, both of them, one blue, one red. We're hoping that may happen the first week of May. And so we're trying to get them to agree to doing that. But I mean, that's all subject to the chaos that they're going through as they literally and figuratively walk through the Capitol building and talking to people. So that's the latest and greatest, which is same as it was, which is chaos.
Yeah.
If you can make that happen, where we have a red lobbyist and a blue lobbyist, what happens? You get purple when you mix them together. So I think that's really good. It's all about Kansas State. But that could be even bigger than the Thrilla in Manila. Like it could be like we should do pay-per-view on this one. So anyway, yeah, Jack, make it happen.
I will.
Come on.
Bring your popcorn.
Adam, anything?
Yeah, so before teeing Jim up, Jack, I heard that the attorney generals have filed a lawsuit against the tariffs. Do you see any sort of, I know it's brand new, but you got any thoughts one way or the other around, hey, is this dog going to hunt at all?
I think there's going to be multiple lawsuits and multiple interested parties, and that because it's it impacts and affects all of us on such a broad range. So you're going to have industry groups that will gang up together, associations that will gang up together, and others that will be filing lawsuits or be participating maybe behind the scenes, providing financial support, providing other support to these lawsuits, and the assertiveness of filing against filing against administration. Congress is also going to get involved, and they already have gotten involved in the usurpation of their powers, their taxing powers, essentially, because from many people's perspective, a tariff is just another tax. So yeah, more to come. I mean, it's just, and I think that from my perspective, it was, well, I don't want us to launch into a political conversation, but I think that things could have been done differently. I understand why they were done the way they were done, which is really to hit hard and see how people would react, meaning foreign countries. And then, and actually I said this previously, to say, okay, here is the large group of targets. Let's make deals on the fringes so that way we can focus on the main villains of the story, the other countries that are imposing, in inequitable trade imbalance on the United States. So yes, more to come on the litigation front, likely all the way up from the Supreme Court and all the way down into state Supreme Courts, federal district courts. It'll get, that's where it'll start, similar to what's going on with other things that the brakes get put on. It'll likely start in federal court, and you'll hear one federal court, Texas, California, wherever, that does something, and then you'll have another court that does something else, and then it gets to the appeals court, and eventually it'll end up with the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yeah. I just find it interesting because I had some of the same questions around, like, hey, philosophically, may disagree with some of the implementation, but philosophically agree with trying to bring some of, I mean, at the end of the day, like, even we were at a presentation with FNB with one of their economic people, which was really great, and basically, like, even the Mexico-Canada thing came down to, yeah, but you're really targeting China shipping goods, like putting stuff in Mexico to then ship here duty free. So it's like kind of come back to, could we just resolve this by saying, China, and a little bit in Europe with cars. And just call this whole thing done. But anyway, so teeing it up for Jack, that for Jim though, we thought he'd be great as a panelist for this week, just talking about, geez, how do I still do sales when my pricing is unknown? Or I'm gonna have to go back to somebody and ask them for more money, or I've got a competitor that, manufactures in the US that suddenly I'm not competitive anymore because I have to get my stuff out of some places got a tariff jurisdiction. Like, how do I even price quotes now? And this isn't sort of theoretical, like just using BGW as the real world example, because I gotta be in the middle of both sides of the conversation. On Easter weekend, I was with a good friend of mine at the beach, Mark Smith, who works for a company called Workright, who sells ergonomic furniture, who is also the furniture person that we're going to buy our furniture for in the new office space. And, on the one in this, Gary's handling that for us. On the one in the spectrum, Gary's like, you need to lock in your pricing, dude. And on the other end of the spectrum, Mark's kind of in panic mode because
Yeah.
the furniture won't even be manufactured and delivered until, August, sometime. So there's a point in time where Workright will have depleted its inventory and then restocked from wherever it's sourcing stuff in. So it's like, what do I even say? It's all getting resolved, but like he was spending hours on the phone trying to just in almost like, and Mark's an awesome dude, but it's almost like he was frozen in,
Yeah, that's the problem.
like, I don't even know what to do with myself, and at the same time, you got customers that are putting pauses on things. I think Jamie's on this call. He's expressed that, yeah, I had customers that have said, hey, I got to put pause on stuff because upstream, we've got pauses coming on stuff. So it's just, as I'm fond of saying, Gary will say, hey, you promised you'd stop swearing. I would say maybe next year. It's a shit show. So with that in mind, what you got, Jim? Solve that.
Well, first of all, hey, thanks for inviting me on here today. And this is a fascinating subject as it relates to what do we do as businesses with this tariff issue. First of all, I want to start out with this, and I think Gary really hit on it, that most of us have been through a lot of crisis. I have been in the Sandler world for 33 years, and before that, I was a sales manager in selling. I've been through at least 5 recessions. I've been through the real slowdown when I got into business in Sandler in '92. The first thing that happened was a major recession. And then we had the big adjustment about 99 or so. Obviously, 9/11 comes in. We had the crash of '08. And also we had COVID, which Gary referred to just a few years back, and we survived. So here's the first point that I think that all of us need to remember. Businesses find a way to survive. In the movie Jurassic Park, there was this line, life always finds a way. I think business people are really smart. And yes, all this legislation is going on, and right now we don't have any control of it. But here's where it really does begin. It really begins with what happens within our mind. And you said, Adam, I think something about, this guy was frozen. That's the problem. Because what we need to think about here is how are we reacting to this? And we are either reacting to all this conversation with tariffs one of two ways. This is where we all are: fear or confidence. And I choose the The latter part there is that, for one, I've been through a lot of these things before. Um, and also, I am going to make a recommendation to everybody. This will be on the notes. I listened to a wonderful podcast by Dan Sullivan. Many of you are familiar with Dan Sullivan of Strategic Coach. He is an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. And this particular podcast was 38 minutes. It came out on Monday, and it was on tariffs. It's on this very conversation here. So what everybody, what I would do, and we'll have this on the notes, is I would listen to Dan Sullivan's podcast. And what I would like to do is that I'll let Dan take care of historical of tariffs. Tariffs have always been around, folks. This is nothing new. It's nothing new. Uh, and so the what will put me into this next position here is I have 4 points today that I would like to get across to all of you as professional business owners, and how to react to this, and what to do. But first of all, what I want you to see is I'm putting up here. Here is a kind of a swing that happens with all of us in our chat. I'm putting this in there. Number one is beliefs. And we are going to have a belief. We have a belief that either tariffs are going to be scary, threatening, they're going to ruin our business, or no, tariffs are reality. One way or the other, it's going to happen. And so from these beliefs we have judgments that take place. From judgments, we act on it, and from our actions, we have consequences as a result of that. So, what I would like to do is, most of you know my style anyway, which is really interactive. I'd like really for everybody to go to the chat, and I would like for you to write in there. So, how are tariffs impacting your business? I want to give you a minute to go to the chat and write that in there. So, how are tariffs impacting your business? Whether a reality, right now, I lost an order, a client canceled an order on me, or this is what could happen. Give you a minute there to read some of those.
So while you're doing the chats, I'm going to insert a commercial right now because yes, Joe Gass, he's prospecting. He says, "Hey, congratulations on the upcoming move to your new office. That sounds so exciting. Who do you have branding your space? Who would that be? I think I'm going to go over to Heritage Signs this afternoon, as a matter of fact, and meet with the team at Joe. So only the best for us, man. So yes, Heritage Signs, and they are amazing in environmental graphics. They do big venues, much bigger than where we're going in, like at the Hornets, the Spectrum Center and Panthers, and where, these big venues, but also in corporate environments. So we're excited. So Joe, you're so funny. Always selling. Always be selling. So let's keep monitoring the chat here. Let's see what's going on here.
Okay, Gary, yeah, if you wouldn't mind reading off a couple of those. I see them too, but how about if you could just read off any that really kind of catch your eye?
Okay. Well, these are always so funny because, Joseph, I can't believe that you missed the news of the day, the NFL draft. No, I didn't miss it. I heard somebody on being interviewed, and he's talking about how he had the world's ugliest tie, and I figured it was a Browns fan, and it was. So, anyway, so no, I have not forgotten about it, but I have more things to worry about than the NFL draft, and I'm not betting on the Browns. So. It won't affect my business as I'm in telecom and electronics. Well, that's an interesting thing because I would imagine that you're getting stuff from Asia in there, but maybe not. Let me keep looking here. stuff we buy is going to go up in price, and customers are going to feel the squeeze and not be able to handle pricing increases as well. Most money handling systems of quality come to me from Korea. They are supposedly meeting at the White House this week to find out what's going on with the tariffs. Let's keep going on here.
Okay.
Let's see. Jamie, as we've spoken before, we have manufacturers holding on innovation projects out of fear or uncertainty. But now is when they need to be leaning into design and innovation, especially if they're considering moving their manufacturing. Oh, yes, that's the truth. You got, let me see. I think that pretty much clears out our chat, which is good. I do like if you're not monitoring the chat, people go back into it if you would, because and write this one down. Beliefs moves to judgments, moves to action, moves to consequences. That is the flow. That
Yep.
is exactly how it works.
And
And
it
if nothing
repeats.
else, yeah,
Yep.
so do write that down. So it's in a circle. You can go clockwise if you want, or if you want to go counterclockwise if you're left-handed. It doesn't matter. Or if you're in Australia. But they do go in a circular motion. So hit us a little more on this pain funnel.
Okay. So I've got 4 steps. And you mentioned something about how to double your business. I'm going to wait until May 1, next Thursday, to work on that. What I'd like to do is the action steps that we, as leaders, business owners, having to sell products and services, what I really believe that we need to do. And the first one here is that we need to have clarity of thought. We need to move away from fear. We need to have confidence in what we're doing. Now, how do you do that? What I would do here, what you see here is something that we call in Sandler the pain funnel. This is a very powerful way of asking questions on a sales call of a particular prospect. But what we're going to do here is you can also use this on a personal basis. It's called a personal pain funnel. So what you have to do is what I advise you is to ask and answer these questions. Take a picture of it, because what we know is, and this is a fact, people buy and make decisions emotionally. And the tariffs is a huge emotional issue, right? We're all talking about it. It's in the news. It's everywhere. So, first of all, what you need to do is stop freaking out. You've been through it before. And what I really want you to think about is I want you to think about what's the worst case scenario here. So, as you look at some of these questions here, clarity will give you focus. Focus will give you confidence in what to do. So you've got to ask yourself the question, financially, how is this going to impact me? It's going to impact me. Am I going to lose 20% of my business if I don't make some changes? Am I going to, what does that look like? And then, the last question there is that what am I going to do about it? Okay, what am I going to do about it? How will I change the interactions that I'm going to have with my customers? How will this affect my prospecting? If you have a sales team, what is the messaging that I am going to need to get out to all of my salespeople? How is this going to affect my relationship with my key vendors and my strategic resources that I have? Okay, so I think this will serve you very, very well. And if anybody doesn't have a question, I'm going to go on. So that's point number 1, clarity of thought. Point number 2, step 2. I need to set up an hour with each of my customers and my strategic relationships. And what I need to do with them is I need to have a conversation with them like we're having right now on the tariffs. And you having a good understanding here of the pain funnel will help them. You need to understand the problem for them. You need to empathize with them. Uh, However, empathy doesn't mean, complete agreement in a sense of caving in. It means, what are we going to do about that? So one of the first things that I would do is I would structure my calendar, and for the next 30 days, I am out seeing people. I'm having cups of coffee. I'm having breakfast, lunch, dinner with all of my key resources. And we are brainstorming. You tell them why that you're going to meet, you get them on the calendar, and just that right there, in the sense that, hey, I'm trying to understand what is really going on here. Not necessarily agreeing. You're going to hear again, some dissension and such. So before going on, this is the idea of collaboration is great. That's where my calendar is going to be. That's where I believe that your time is best spent. Thoughts, questions, folks. I brought 2 points in here. Thoughts, questions on this. Kind of straightforward, pretty simple.
So, Jim, I want people to go back in the Wayback Machine to 2008 and 2009.
Yeah.
Um, Having been in the securities business at that time, and having been when 30 million bucks worth of us got wiped out overnight from a series of things. And I was on the phone because we still had some assets that had potential value. And I was on the phone with the CEO of Compact Power, Roger Braswell. He's been on the podcast too, by the way. And man, he was dodging icebergs and big rocks, and he didn't know if he was going to make it. But we were on the phone like every week. Like, he answered my calls, and he would be proactive in calling me. Like, hey, what's going on? Now, fast forward, he sold to the Home Depot for $265 million. At that time in 2009, I don't think he was thinking that that was even close to being a reality. I think he was just hoping and praying that he could salvage that thing and that it would live to fight another day. And he did. But what I learned in that moment, and I would call investors and whatever and like, hey, the news isn't good, but here's what I got. Here's what I learned. Most people were hiding under the covers
Yeah.
in our business. They refused to pick up the phone and call because these were not pleasant phone calls, not fun at all. But they were hiding, hoping that it would go away, as Adam does the ostrich head in the sand that doesn't serve you well. But the point is like, that's one thing you can do,
Yeah. That's right.
because everybody else isn't doing it. It'll differentiate you in a big way.
That's the
Just
point.
communicating.
Action,
Just communicating.
momentum. Yeah, communicate. So the remedy for fear is action. It's moving. It's momentum. Momentum gives you confidence. When you're moving, you have life. You have hope. So thank you, Gary. Anybody else? Anybody else have any questions or thoughts of where we are right now? Because my next point you're probably not going to like.
Oh boy. By the way, while people are thinking, like, hit us up in the chat on this if you got anything. But Joseph said, oh, and I forgot about this. Electronic imports are exempt from tariffs. Oh, that's
Yeah,
good. And
yeah.
most telecoms can't use Chinese companies or products. Smart. Okay, cool. Anything else out there? Otherwise, hit us with what we don't want to hear, Jim.
Step number 3, raise your prices. Raise your prices. What do most people do in crisis? They freak
Cut them.
out. They lower their prices. So what I want you to do is I want you to raise your prices. Why? Well, It's funny. Um, every time I've raised my prices, the quality of my new clients was always better. And you also will find out when you do this, you're going to lose some clients. So here's my point. If you have been using a source in China, and you have had really, really great pricing, it's really easy to get lazy. And what I mean by that is that, and this is a fact, if you sell on price, you're going to be vulnerable to losing business on price. And so I think a lot of our companies and sales teams have become fat, lazy, and unresourceful. And so the idea is this is an opportunity. Here again, you look at anything, it's either a crisis or opportunity. I tend to be one of those that looks at it as an opportunity, because life keeps changing. It's never going to be status quo. So you may not like what I am saying, but it is a fact, and it's a fact that I've done many times. I would never go back to my pricing where I was in 92 or whatever that was. So now all of a sudden, since you raise your prices, I think what happens is there's a new level of commitment in what you do and the people that work with you, which is going to lead me into point number 4. It's kind of funny. Somebody put in the chat, "Hey, Gary, you didn't talk about the NFL draft." Well, you know what I find it's funny? These kids, I mean, they're 21, 22 years old. And now if you follow sports and especially college football with what's happening where they're paying these kids 18, 19 years old, phenomenal athletes, you know what they all do? Every single one of them practices. I think the world of selling, what we do? We make the mistake of practicing in front of our clients and prospects. And that is a huge, huge mistake. And so the idea with number 4 is you need to ramp up your selling skills. You want to get into and bypass this thing, whatever it is. If you're not affected, I saw Joe Farrell, I saw your point right there, good for you. But regardless, now is an opportunity for you to invest in yourself, invest in your team. And here's what I mean by that. Let me give you the what and let me give you the how behind this. So, what? Accountability. Accountability. What do I mean by that? I see very few firms that are actually holding the sales team or the project managers accountable to certain weekly behaviors. The best athletes, the best actors, the best musicians, the best artists are always spending money on various coaches, dietary, weightlifting, batting coaches, whatever that it may be. But the managers, I see a weakness right now in the market of a real crucial lack of sales leadership skills. Usually what happens when that person becomes a leader, it's a fact. VP of sales, sales manager, whatever. They've been a salesperson, they get to a point and they're completely are different skill sets between being that leader. So number 1 is don't talk about it. And I don't believe, if you say I'm holding my people accountable, I don't believe it. The best leaders and the best managers, the best coaches, what do? They hold their people accountable to doing the reps. They hold them accountable to doing what needs to be done in a certain prospecting behaviors. And you don't manage results, you manage behavior. So that is a key thing. So you've got to determine what do those behaviors look like? Next, you need a good
Wait,
30.
wait.
Yeah,
Hold on. I want to add one thing on accountability in this one because this was something that Ron Weatherly talked about today. And he said most entrepreneurs go into being an entrepreneur because they want freedom. They don't want to be, tethered to this or that. But he said at the same time, the best leaders have somebody holding them accountable.
that's right.
And he talked about the power of his outside coaches, and he has multiple that he uses. And he has paid outside coaches, and he said one thing about when you have a paid outside coach, you're going to pay attention because you're paying them money and you're going to show up, which I thought was really interesting. And so, before we keep going, I want to interject with what Joseph had launched into this. And Joe, yeah, we did see we will be raising our prices on you to pay for the new furniture because of the tariffs that are going to be enacted. I'm just kidding. um, but this is interesting. So Joseph says, I'll add my end clients like law firms in 2017 to 2019, the last time tariffs were implemented, my sales increased over 20% quarter over quarter. Why? Because companies were now concerned and seeking my services to help with the trimming of the perceived fat and trimming user count and examining products sold to them by direct reps and reducing operating expenses, but they were increasing value. Interesting.
Yeah,
Thanks
there
for
you go.
weighing in on that one, Joseph. Appreciate
Yeah.
that. Keep going,
Thank,
Jim. I'm
yeah,
sorry
thank,
to interrupt.
no, that was great, Gary. Thank you for bringing that in on accountability. You know, the ironic thing is accountability brings in freedom. It really does. Accountability brings in freedom. I think a lot of people, a lot of employees, they need to know, hey, what the expectations are of them. And I think leadership does a very poor job of really creating what those expectations are. And once they know, then they know how that they can operate towards that. All right. Uh, 30-second commercial. What do I mean by that? Who are you? What do you do? So you not only have a good 30-second commercial of who you are, but for a certain product or service of what that really looks like. And a good 30-second commercial it is 30 seconds. It's not 45 or 1 minute. It tells what you do, but it really brings in emotional reasons that build into that. Hey, we work with clients who are frustrated that they're not closing deals in a fast enough time, or they're really concerned with how long it's taking them to get to the decision, and those decisions are driving a real loss of revenue. So in your world, it's not about features and benefits. It's about, what do you do, but what are the emotional consequences that somebody that can relate to, that if they're not getting this particular thing done, they can really begin to see it. Next, you and your team, what are your top 5 to 10 gap questions? That's what I call them, gap questions. What is a gap question? Here's where we are now. Here's where we could be. And see, that real salesmanship is really being able to illuminate that gap. That's really what good salespeople do, is that there's a problem here. By working with you, it's like we got to get out of the commodity business. All of us, we sell value. How do you do that? You and your team are practicing and working on what are those gap questions, the 5 to 10. And you come up as a team with the best 5 to 10 so that when your team is going out or making calls, they're asking those questions because that creates conversations. And that creates getting people to be emotionally involved with that. Next, do you really have a sales process? I mean, seriously. You may say, yeah, I'm using Salesforce. Yeah, I'm using CRM. Yeah, we got stages for our particular pipeline. That's not what I mean. That's half of it right there. A sales process is once you take that lead and you are cultivating that lead from one stage to another, what are the steps? What are the questions in play that really take you from one step to another? So, leader, it is up to you to cultivate that. Now more than ever, you really need to have your own sales process. So it's the XYZ sales process. And you are teaching your people these are the steps. Now, from there, what do you do? All of these young men being drafted in the next weekend, tonight and through the weekend. What's the first thing that they're going to do? They're going to get acculturatized to the team that's drafted them. And what are they going to do? They're going to practice. They're bringing them in and they're going to practice, become part of the culture, practice, 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 practice. So what that means is you practice and you role play around your sales process. And you don't send them out until they're proficient at certain things. And along with that, what can you practice? Let me dive deeper here with this. What does that really look like? Well, what are the top 3 objections and stalls that we're going to have? And one of them certainly is going to be price. One of them is good. That's going to be number one. So how do we deal with that? How do we have those conversations around that? You've got to be able to sell on value. Secondly, what you could practice is your initial call, your initial discovery call. That's an obvious that can be practiced. Another that can be practiced is your very first call. Once they make a call, get an appointment, you can practice that there. Another, demo. Practice your demo. How often do you all really practice demos? And how do you really set those demos up? So, team, I'll use this for Q&A. We can go into a little bit more specifics here because Adam was talking to me about prior to this, hey, my clients are canceling deals. What do I do because of the tariffs? Or, now all of a sudden I'm having a supply problem and, getting products. What do I do? We'll do some Q&A right here, but those were my 4 points of what we proactively can do moving forward.
And just so everybody knows, I found that Dan Sullivan podcast on turning tariffs into your strategic advantage. Grab that link in the chat. That's where it's at. So, Jack Santinello, you have your hand raised.
I'm going like this, actually, electronically, right?
Yeah.
So I want to go back to your comment, Jim, about raising prices. And I understand and I appreciate the psychology behind that. But then I think about, well, first of all, comment. When I was taught long ago as a young associate by one of my mentors that when someone says, "Are you ready?" or "Are you sitting down?" he actually gave me a bottle of Jack Daniels. And so this is circa 1996 or so. And I want to say that I've drank some of it, but I haven't. It actually has evaporated somewhat. I haven't touched it because the seal is still there. But in case of emergency, break. And so I got through. I was getting close to doing it when you said some certain things today. But so when you're talking about raising prices, I think that one of the fears in doing that, and we've talked many times about the psychology of doing business and dealing with customers, dealing with vendors. How long do you wait? How many airplane bottles do you go through in hearing customers say, yeah, I'm going with this other company that has lowered their prices because you've raised your prices. What is the pain period? I know this is very subjective, but it's kind of like, okay, people will want to band-aid the problem and be like, okay, yeah, I hear you, Jim. I tried it for about a week didn't work? I mean, what is kind of the gestation period of feeling the pain that you've seen when you raise prices, when competitors are lowering prices? And that may be an unanswerable question, but just your thoughts on that.
Well, thank you, Jack. That's really good. So my thought would be that you just move through that, and I don't have to have any Jack Daniels just to do that. But a way of introducing that to to anybody is, hey Jack, I've got a a tough conversation. It's never easy. Can we talk about that? And of course, people are going to go, well, okay, well, what do you have? Okay, so now I have it, and I say, hey, I want to talk about pricing, and we're going to we need to raise our pricing. And so, hey, can we have a conversation about that? And then somebody can say, well, we already are. Let's so yeah, let's talk about that. So I think that, part of it is a mental game. You've got to be able to sell value. And it is very, very subjective. But let's just say, for example, someone said, hey, I'm going to go in another direction because this other company is lower. Um, and I think that part of that would be if I was with that particular customer, Jack, I would say, hey, Jack, I'm sorry to hear that. I'd hate to lose you as a customer. Hey, do you mind? Can I ask just a few questions? And of course, you're going to go, yeah. So, Jack, let me ask you, if the same situation was happening to you and one of your clients was coming to you and asking you that and telling you that they were going to be lowering the fees, um, first of all, how would you react to that? How would you do that? So I'd have a conversation about that, and that'll get people talking. And the other is because this happens all the time. Hey, Jack, have you ever gone with a lower cost alternative and you found out later that that wasn't really the best remedy? That for whatever reason you didn't get the service that you wanted, for whatever reason you didn't get the quality that you wanted, for whatever reason you didn't get the kind of communication that you wanted, and then you ended up going back to where you were before. Has that ever happened? So those would be some questions that I would ask, and some of you might be fearful of losing clients. Here's my question. My question to you is really, is that um, is that client relationship what you really want to have? Is that an ideal relationship? Or,
You know,
yeah,
I'm going to weigh in on this one too, just because a lot of times people don't even know what their margins are. You would be surprised on each client. And I'll give you an example without using names, but Adam will know who this is. And this client, 25% of their revenue is being driven by one big client, big builder. And they were, I said, well, where are your margins? And, oh, I'm sure, they're good or whatever. I'm like, but I said, well, you need to know. And
yeah,
so his CFO went and digging into the numbers and found out that they were paying $35 for every job. Like they were losing $35 for every invoice. And it was a lot of money, a lot of, and I said, he goes, I'm just afraid that if they go away, I said, if they go away, you're going to give yourself this massive bottom line hit to the positive. Yeah, you don't want to lose them because it's a flag that you love carrying, hey, we serve this company, but you got to go in with data because what good are you going to be to them if you're bankrupt and you're out of business? You're going to be of zero value. Right now, they're loving it and they don't know that you're losing $35 an invoice. So they
point.
went in and like his knees were knocking and he was about ready to throw up before he went into this meeting when he called me. I'm like, go with the data And that's not, Adam's the data guy on this call. He is the data guy. I am not. But I'm like, just use the data. And sure enough, they went in and said, "Hey, here's the reality. You don't have to be a bully and go around and throw your weight around. You just go in with data and like, hey, we want a long-term relationship.
Right.
We are going to go out of business if we keep doing this. So
Mm.
if we are valuable to you, and people are reasonable if you're reasonable back, but go in with the data, man. I mean, it's really important. And so Papa Joe says, hey, it really is about the importance of communication. It's surprising how many clients are anticipating price increasing because they don't live in a bubble. Yeah, but just be fair. Know your numbers
Yeah.
and have a conversation, even if you're in an ambiguity state and you don't, what does this mean? I've had people on this lease that we're going into, hey, we need you to sign right now. And they're using
Right.
high pressure tactics for ambiguous things that, all right, so China's 145% right now, or whatever it is. Um, who knows what it is at this moment. But if you're locking in now, what's it going to be in 30 days if they have an agreement that's in place? Like you just pushed me, like, and I feel it and I notice that. So it still comes back to communication and honesty, just being honest.
Yeah. Thank you. Jack, I'm going to make this comment too, that if a salesperson or if a company hears that we're moving away to another supply source for less, then we didn't do our job. We should have found that out way early. If you're hearing that after the fact, then there is a problem, a communication problem. You're not communicating more with your clients. So that goes up to that second point that I made is go now, fill your calendar in the next 30 days, spend time with your customers, know what their fears are, help them with a SWOT analysis of what's going on. If by you doing that with them, they'll really appreciate that. That's a hard one to get back when someone has already made their decision. It's like, hey, I'm tired of dating you. I'm going to go with somebody else. You know, uh, that's a hard one to rebound from. So the point is, we need to know beforehand. And I'm going to make another comment too. I think I was talking to a client yesterday, and I think a lot of times what we do is that I'll go back to a great doctor that I had because it really pinpoints the story. I had a hip replacement. And I never will forget that this is what this doctor had said to me because I had had years of pain in this particular hip replacement. Um, and and so he said to me, "Well, Jim, you can keep on uh, keeping on with that. You don't have to have the surgery. The surgery is expensive. You're going to be out of work for a little bit. You're going to be in a lot of discomfort and a lot of pain. You're going to have some sleepless nights. Um, but hopefully, after that period of time, you're going to be fine." Now, I need to know what to do because my calendar is filling up and I have a lot of surgeries coming up here. So if this is something that you want to do, let's do it. But if you don't want to do it, then I need to know. And so I heard that, and next thing I know, okay, let's pick a date. Now, when I did the surgery, 4 weeks later, I was super happy that I did it. I really was. And then 6 months later, it's like I could do backflips. It was just amazing. Well, here's my point. My point is that some of us are letting our prospects and other companies that we're working with procrastinate because of the fear. And I think, as a good doctor, that doctor did what was right. I think it's malpractice for a good salesperson not to try to close for that business when you can. And that doesn't mean hard close. It just means if there's pain and there's a reason to make a change, I think you're doing your prospects and your customers a disservice, a malpractice, if you do not encourage them to move forward. That's why you're there. Not to try to sell them, but to offer value and long-term relationships, especially if you've got a product or service that can really help them. Folks, I know we just
Right.
have a few minutes left. Thoughts, comments?
I want to bring up something that's related to, but from a different perspective, which is more of an business owner introspective perspective, which is, because we've been talking about kind of like the relationship with customer sales, that kind of thing, but related there too, an example would be in a professional services company, like BGW or Shoemaker, where, do you have the right people doing the work, and what is your conversion to revenue? So what is, the number, the percentage of realization? So we do work. I have myself and others at billable rates, and all this gets put into a pot. And then there's an evaluation as to what we end up billing the client and then what they end up paying, right? And so it may be that have a young associate that maybe spent a little bit too much time, which is fine. I'd rather them spend more time making sure that they're correct on a particular issue. But maybe it was something that maybe I could have given to a mid-level associate that would have had the answer sooner than later, just because they're older and more experienced. And so managing those aspects, and because we've talked about, those subscriptions that you have that just auto renew and you pay for them kind of just because you need them, and you're not negotiating that. So the little margins. But on the personal side of things, I see, because we have to do things like that, I see clients who are not looking into seeing how they might better serve a client. And so that maybe while they raise their prices, maybe they don't have to raise them as much because they're reducing expenses as well. So it kind of reduces some of the burden if you do some introspective review, periodic review of your expenses. And we had focused last time on the out-of-pocket expenses, but also it made me think about, after that conversation, that we really didn't talk about, having the right people doing the right things at the right time. And, and if we don't have that going on and we misstep, then, we may be writing off costs, and then, still incurring them, but not charging them back to the customer. And then, so that just messes up the numbers and the numerics, I think.
Thank you. That's good.
Wow, this hour went by fast. Of
Yeah,
course.
it did.
Good stuff.
Any
It
other?
did.
Good. Yes, it did. Thoughts,
Well, guys,
questions?
thank you. You got 2 more minutes before we turn into pumpkins.
Any action steps? As as we're here, folks, what did you hear? What are you going to do different?
I think the talking to customers thing is a big deal. Like, a lot of people avoid that, but that's a big deal.
It's a difficult conversation to have, because especially, I mean, one of the things I despise about my job is being a credit manager, which also includes having those conversations as to, why aren't you paying your bill? And then the conversation, well, we kind of thought the bill was too high, and eventually you reach out to us, kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, let's talk about why the bill was too high. And it may be that, again, they feel like that there was something on there that they shouldn't have been charged for, and it was something that we had talked about. So yes, they're going to get charged for it. Or it may be, okay, in the possibility that there maybe was a miscommunication, out of goodwill, we'll do this. I don't usually say it that way, because I hate it when I have to pay or try to get late fees reduced, or eliminated on credit cards when I miss it by 1 day or 2 days because I'm out of town. And then they say, we'll give you this one-time freebie, kind of thing. I'm like, okay, making a lot of money off of me with the fees. So, just go ahead and reduce it. But, so yeah, it's just, but the reality is I have found that clients do appreciate that. They appreciate that you've taken the time to reach out to them, that you've had the fortitude to reach out to them and have those conversations, because it really a lot of times doesn't become about the bill. It becomes about something that's on their mind, that maybe they misunderstood the guidance that you've given to them, or maybe they implemented something and maybe it wasn't as successful, but then you have to remind them that, you don't have a crystal ball kind of thing. And so, we're providing you guidance, and, it may be the way that you have implemented it. Have you thought about the fact that, okay, we suggested that, I don't know, you use 4 people for whatever to get the due diligence done, and you only use 2. And so you wonder why you're behind on due diligence. Well, because you have 50% capacity.
Good points. Thank you, Jack.
All right, gentlemen and ladies in the gallery. Thank you. This completes week 253. And we're going to hold Jack to doing the Thrilla in Manila 2.0 with his red team and blue team. And that should be a fun and spirited conversation. So we'll be anxiously looking for Jack to do his job and take some action. Again, before I sign off, make sure that you get from this webinar chat that Dan Sullivan podcast link,
Yes.
or if you didn't do it, Google it, Dan Sullivan podcast tariffs, and it'll take you right to it. So this will be up on the BGW CPA YouTube channel, as well as on Shoemaker's YouTube channel later on this afternoon. Jim, thanks for taking time.
Welcome.
And Adam and Jack, you guys have a wonderful day, and avoid the rain.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you,
guys.
guys.
Yeah,
See you next
thanks,
week.
See y'all.
everybody.
All right,
Bye-bye.
bye.